What's up, nerds? Welcome to another episode of Phantology. Today we have our classic month in review episode. We've done this a few times. We try to do this every month. Unfortunately, there's not much news to report in April because COVID shut everything down, including fantasy news, which a lot of the times is reporting on TV shows. Obviously, there is some news on books because authors should be writing even more than usual, hopefully, during this time. Hopefully we have that as a silver lining. But we don't have a whole lot of news items, but I do have Ben and Josh on the line with me to break down what we do have. What's up, guys?
Steven, I'm excited to be here on this special event fantasy news because we are also doing our special edition top 5 fantasy book series, right?
Yeah. I neglected to mention that we are going to be breaking down our top 5 series, each of us in all of fantasy books, everything that we've read, top 5, and then roasting each other and relentlessly dragging series through the mud that you guys liked that I didn't. Anything that you disagree with me on is incorrect.
Yep. Our opinion is fact, and if you disagree with anything that we say, you are wrong. And I'll just say ahead, I'm disappointed that there's not a more lively podcast comments section like there is on YouTube. I think it's a great flaw in that system.
Oh, yeah, like you want more immediate viewer feedback?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, if you do want to chat with us more, check us out on Discord. The links to join that are available on our social media at Phantology Books. We're available on all platforms. And if you really like the show, check us out on Patreon as well. And you can support and get some extra benefits. All of this information is on our website, www.phantologybooks.com. So let's jump into it. Looks like Ben has stepped out for a moment, but we are going to start talking about April fantasy news. And the first news item that I have is not really news, but at the beginning of April, there was a very entertaining show, the Dusty Wheel YouTube show, that Brandon Sanderson was on, where he was chatting with his longtime friend Matt Hatch, and they broke down the Wheel of Time series. I mean, the Dusty Wheel is based on the Wheel of Time, so they're talking about the series, specifically the upcoming TV series, which Sanderson has some inside knowledge about. And they also talked some Rhythm of War, which we're eagerly awaiting in November. Did you guys have a chance to watch that show?
I watched about half an hour of it, I think. I didn't watch all of it. Yeah, I did watch it. I thought it was great. I always love hearing Sanderson talk about his craft.
Yeah, he's fantastic to listen to. I mean, he's such a total nerd, but he just loves to talk, and he gives some awesome tips and engages with the community so well. And I think we would be remiss if we did not mention that on May 4th, which hopefully will be the day that this episode drops, you can check out Brandon Sanderson for free. Tor is giving out a free ebook of The Way of Kings. Just hop on their website. I think you have to join some kind of reading list, and you can get The Way of Kings for free. Probably normally like a $10 ebook. Fantastic book, one of my very favorite books. So don't miss that.
Listen, is this like May the 4th be with you honorable mention? Is this because what is going on here? Is it to prepare people for Rhythm of War and kind of drum up some excitement and get some new readership there? In his tweet, he said that he had been kind of trying to go toward books for a while, and they finally let him do it for free. That's pretty cool. That's cool. Yeah, and for those of you that don't know, Warbreaker is also available for free. For some reason, and maybe there's somebody at Tor that's going to end up listening. I'm going to ruin it for everybody, but you can go on Brandon Sanderson's website and get like the whole book, but it starts at like chapter 4 or something. But through some sleuthing at Phantology, we discovered that if you change the URL to chapters like 1, and even the prologue works, that you can access those chapters for free still. So if you are interested in that, come on Discord and we will share those URLs with you.
Nice insider tip. Thank you.
Yeah, this is hard breaking news from Phantology where we got the scoop. But yeah, all you have to do is go where it says chapter 4, just type in chapter 1 and you'll be good to go.
So on the Dusty Wheel show, a couple things to note. So he mentioned that he has talked with Rafe Judkins, the director, the showrunner for the Wheel of Time TV show. He's visited the set. He really likes a lot of things that Rafe is doing. There are not any huge major departures. There's only one thing. He said there was one major thing that he disagreed with Rafe on. He understands where he's coming from. He thinks it's an acceptable decision, but he does disagree. Everything else he's on board with. So I think that's pretty good news and gets me continually excited for the show. Unfortunately, filming did pause, so they do still have to wrap up 2 more episodes for filming, but I'm hoping for an early 2021 release of the TV show.
Yeah, and to put that disagreement in context, he was very respectful of like Rafe's decision. I don't think he was trying to cause any drama, and I don't think really if you listen to the interview, it doesn't come across that way. So it's not like he's saying that this series is going to be ruined because of this decision that Rafe made or anything like that. He just said that he would have gone a different way with it or would have made different decisions, but he recognizes that he's not the showrunner, obviously, and so he wasn't being dramatic or anything, I don't think.
He also said he's not sure how much content in terms of sexuality, language, etc. this show will have. It's been speculated that it will be kind of like a Game of Thrones feel, but he could not confirm or deny that. We try to give content warnings at Phantology, so I guess that's something to watch for. So that's it for the Wheel of Time show. I mean, if there were some more tidbits, smaller things, if you want to go back and actually watch the Dusty Wheel show. He then talked about Rhythm of War, the upcoming book 4 of the Stormlight Archive. He mentioned that there was going to be a year time jump, and also that although it was a book of flashbacks from Venli and Eshonai, that there was another character that doesn't have any flashbacks yet that gets a lot of time on screen. So my speculation is that might be like a Yasna type character. Anyway, a few little details that might have come out before, but was kind of fun to see him talk about.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that this hype cycle is just going to start getting bigger and bigger for Rhythm of War as we get closer and closer to November. I'm excited for it.
A couple other small news items. There really wasn't too much more. Artemis Fowl. We covered Artemis Fowl in a podcast earlier, so we might as well mention that the movie is going to be released on Disney Plus on May 29th, so later this month. There is a release date for Black Song, Anthony Ryan's follow-up to book 5, I guess you'd say, of his Bloodsong series. Started with Bloodsong, and now we're on to book 5. That series is kind of a love-hate for me. We can chat more about that in the Discord. There were several other series that got announcements. I think there was a new Daniel Abraham series and a Tad Williams book, and there were a few more that we were chatting about in Discord, but I can't remember all of them right now. And the last thing worth mentioning is there is a cover for Battleground, book 17, 16 of the Dresden Files. I can never remember which one it actually is. Josh, do you know?
I think it's 17. Yeah, I think we were up to book 15 and 16, 17 are coming out. In terms of non-book news, all the Marvel movies are continually being shifted around and rearranged due to Disney's, dates due to COVID. So I don't think we want to get into that because it's kind of boring. And if you're interested, just go read an article about it and look at the nice timeline that they have made. Those are all in flux. I guess it's worth mentioning.
Yeah, I mean, this is a hard time we're living in right now. And unfortunately, not even fantasy and nerd culture has been unaffected by COVID. It's everywhere.
It is very infectious.
Quick moment of silence for COVID and fantasy. Anyway, let's switch feet here and do something a little exciting, something we haven't done before. A little special episode. We're going to do our top 5 fantasy series plus honorable mentions if you want to go there. So the way we're going to do this is each of us is going to break down their top 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Briefly say what the series is, maybe like one sentence about why you like it or some kind of background, not too long. And then once your list is over, it's open to the other people to roast your series and talk about what's wrong with what you put down. And then we'll go through everyone's series, and hopefully by the end we have some kind of consensus, or at least a listener might have an idea of which series are worth reading. I think we can say all of the series that are going to make our top 5 are worth reading. We don't want to discount any series too hard because anything that's making a top 5 list is obviously fantastic. But that is the format. So who wants to start? Ben, Josh, what do you guys want to do?
So I'm just going to say, I feel very attacked already. The fact that we cannot prematurely defend our series choices. We only get one sentence, but I'll start.
Make it a good sentence.
All right, Ben, you go for it, man. So here's the thing. I'm just going to say I'm probably the least well read out of everybody here, out of the 3 people here. So be gentle here.
So you're saying your top 5 are like the 5?
Okay, so starting from worst to best, I guess.
Or good to best, right? These are all great series.
Yeah, these are, they're top 5, right? They've got to be good. Okay, Red Rising, First Law, Harry Potter, Wheel of Time, and Cosmere. I'm lumping all of Cosmere together as the top fantasy series of all time right now.
Okay. Any honorable mentions worth mentioning, or are you just going top 5?
Yeah, so honorable mentions, Farseer. I've only read the original trilogy there, but I really loved it. Licanius, I mean, more contemporary, really, really liked it. Ender's Game and Ender's Shadow, awesome. And there's a lot of series that I wish I could include on this, but there's not enough books that have been written in them, namely Name of the Wind.
So for you, just to clarify, just because the only first two are out.
Yeah, so I'm saying that that this has to be complete, and I know that Cosmere isn't complete yet, but there's enough completion to it that I think that it warrants.
Well, the first law series is not complete either. He's written 7 books, coming out 8.
Well, I'm saying the First Law trilogy.
Okay, yeah.
I think the point is that theoretically, like the third Name of the Wind book could kind of ruin the first and second one. And
Right.
they're great books, but like if none of the plot pans out, then it could just kind of ruin it, right? Whereas like Mistborn is done, like the first era of Mistborn is done, the first Law trilogy is done. Those are going to always stand as great works of literature.
Right. Same with Red Rising. Like there's other books coming out about it, and I'm kind of cheating and including all of Cosmere as a whole because I mean, how do you choose between like Stormlight and Mistborn and
Easy, you choose Stormlight.
Well, Stormlight's not done though yet. You know, like that's a hot take. So
you're gonna be upset with my list, Steven. So I'm excited.
So that's my. Hopefully, I didn't ruffle too many feathers there.
Okay, so you went Red Rising 5. I think that's pretty solid. Red Rising actually makes my list as well. Preview, and that's a fantastic trilogy. It's more of a sci-fi feel. So I think another thing that we can do here in this episode is kind of give people a little primer as to what the series are. So that's a very fast-paced sci-fi. It's not a YA, but it kind of feels YA sometimes just because of how quickly it's written and because it's from a first-person present tense perspective. Your number 4 was Joe Abercrombie First Law books. Was that right?
Yep, that's right.
So those books are pretty different. They're a harder fantasy series. They're grimdark. They're very violent and brutal. And we actually just reviewed the 4th book of the universe. So he has a trilogy. He's got 3 standalones, and then he's got another trilogy. So Ben is referring to the original trilogy only, but that series is much more adult, but is just beautifully written and has some fantastic characters. So yeah, I agree with you there. Great choice. Number 3 was...
Sorry, we've also reviewed Red Rising. If you want to check that out, if you happen to be a first time listener.
Yeah, Red Rising is one of the series that we've reviewed in its entirety, the original trilogy.
And then Harry Potter, which look at obviously this isn't like high literature, and there's plenty of things that you can poke holes in it. But it was my first introduction to reading, and it's always gonna have a place in my heart. And I think it did a lot for the community. We talked about this on Discord a couple months ago, and there's I think the subreddit fantasy, our fantasy, put out like a list of asking people to say how they got introduced to reading and fantasy, and there's a large proportion said Harry Potter. So it's hard to discount the effect that it's had. And sometimes I'll still fall asleep listening to the audiobooks of Harry Potter.
The Jim Dale ones are better. Fight me.
The first audiobook you could actually get for free during the COVID crisis as well.
Yeah.
If you're through Audible.
Well, and Libby, Overdrive.
Oh, really? You can just go check it out?
Yep, through Overdrive you can. Yeah. Yeah, we actually reviewed the first Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and we have a review of the second book coming out pretty soon. Those reviews are a little more tongue-in-cheek because I feel like Harry Potter's kind of been reviewed to death at this point. So we're really just kind of like having a fun time trying to poke holes in the plot and think about different things. So yeah, we all love Harry Potter. I don't think there's going to be anyone in the fantasy community who can really like have a hot take that Harry Potter sucks or something. I mean, that's just an ice cold take.
Yeah, anybody with that take is just wrong. It might not be your specific cup of tea, but it doesn't suck. Fight me on that too.
And then Ben, you went 2 and 1 where Wheel of Time and Cosmere.
And again, it's kind of hard to discount the impact of either of them. Wheel of Time, I eventually want to go through and reread because I listened to them all pretty quickly. But even then, like I had severe book depression after they ended.
15 books.
Yep, 15 books.
So very, very big investment.
Started by Robert Jordan, finished by Brandon Sanderson because tragically Robert Jordan passed away. But I think that most fans would agree that Brandon Sanderson finished it well. And there's a lot of people that might find issues with it, but most people agree that it was the ending that fans deserved.
Yeah, so you chose really two largest, most epic fantasy series out there for your top two?
Well, besides Malazan.
But I've
Yeah,
only read
yeah.
the first book there. Yeah, and Cosmere, again, they're great books, every one of them. I think I don't know how many there are right now. 20? 19?
Not that many. I think that's how many books he's written in total. There are 3 Stormlights, plus you have Elantris and Warbreaker make 5, and then you have the 6 Mistborns that have been written so far, take you up to 11. Emperor's Soul gets you to 12. Are there any more that I'm missing? I guess if you...
White Sand.
Yeah, White Sand, the comics, which that... I did not love
and
those.
then Sixth of the Dusk.
Yeah, some of the shorter
and
stories.
the one, I don't want to do any spoilers. But,
Shadows of Silence in the Forest of Hell.
Oh, yeah, and Mistborn Secret History as well.
Yeah.
So I guess if you count them all as separate entries, then yeah, you could get up that high.
And then if you take the Lift short story.
Yeah, Edge Dancer as
Didn't
well.
that appear
Edge Dancer,
in its entirety in Oathbringer?
In Arcanum Unbounded? No, the Lift short story appeared in Arcanum Unbounded. It was released between books 2 and 3.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think we're getting close to 20 almost with all those.
Look, I mean, this is an incredible undertaking that Sanderson is taking on, and he's doing it incredibly well. I'm saying incredible way too much, but that's the word that describes the Cosmere for me.
Okay, do you want to go next, Steven, or do you want me to?
I want you to.
You're going to have some very hot takes about my list.
Okay, let's hear it.
You're going to hate it, actually. Ooh, you're going to be so mad at me. Okay, so I am more going just purely based off of enjoyment, okay, is how I'm listing mine out. Not really based on influence, just how much I enjoyed reading them. Okay, so keep that in mind.
Okay.
So, number 5, Dresden Files. So we haven't talked about that one yet, but it's a wizard in Chicago that takes on all manner of just normal crime lord stuff, fairy stuff, vampire stuff, wizard politics stuff, and it gets deeper and deeper and is fantastic. I love it.
We've reviewed, I think, 4 or 5 of these books so far, so if you're interested in seeing them, you can check out those reviews.
Yeah, and those are little shorter entries, especially at first, and it's the best urban fantasy that's out there.
Yeah, well, I'm sure some people will take issue with that because people get pretty defensive about their urban fantasy, but in my opinion, it's my favorite urban fantasy. Okay, number 4 for me is Dark Tower.
Okay.
This might be some recency bias because I just barely finished Dark Tower last week.
And we just barely reviewed it as well.
Yeah. So this is, for those of you that don't know, it's Stephen King's take on Lord of the Rings. And it has, I think, the best character work in all of fantasy. And so that's part of why it made my top 5. And I really enjoyed reading it. And just the character work is top tier. It's amazing.
Although you did have some major issues with the ending and some of the plot decisions.
Yes. And so that is true. It had some of the highs and some of the highest highs in terms of character work and some of the lowest lows in terms of just some of the structure of the series and how he ended some books. And honestly, the series ending as a whole, I'm not going to spoil anything, but we have a semi non-spoiler review if you want to go check that out. It's no spoilers in terms of plot elements, but we do talk about some characters and how they're introduced.
And you put a full spoiler review reaction on Patreon, right?
Yeah, full spoiler. Initial, I finished reading it, went down and recorded right after. So it's my unfiltered thoughts. Number 3, I don't think this one's a very hot take, but is Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, this is the granddaddy fantasy. I've read through it twice. I read it when I was like 10 as well, but I'm not counting that time. But like twice kind of as a more adult reader. And I'm by no means like a Lord of the Rings expert or scholar or anything. But every time I jump back in it, it's just written beautifully and amazing characters, and I just love it. And I more just go there to experience the world, experience Middle Earth, not really to become an expert on it. So,
have you read any of the others, Similarian or any of the other side spin-off stories?
When I was younger, after I finished it the first time, I tried to read the Similarian and couldn't do it. It was just too dense for me. So I haven't gone back to it since. Number 2, I'm with Ben on this, is Harry Potter. I absolutely loved Harry Potter as a kid. It was, in my opinion, I didn't think it would ever be topped in terms of just how much I loved, like just purely loved something. I would carry around a Harry Potter book wherever I was and read it. And this is when they were, our generation knows, you somehow have a book that's like this thick in your backpack and you're carrying it around and it adds wear and tear to your backpack. So you're going through backpacks like, every, I don't know. It was so much fun though. I loved
And
it.
probably going through books pretty quickly too, wearing them out.
It also played into the midnight release of movies culture very strongly. So like I remember just waiting in these like long lines that were wrapping like around the theater so we could sit there and watch a movie that started at 12 freaking a.m. What a ridiculous thing to do, but for some reason there was like this time of like 10 years from like the mid 2000s that was very popular to do.
If I remember correctly, I think we saw together about Harry Potter 7 parts 1 and 2. I don't think we waited until midnight for part 1, but you guys waited in line like all day for part 2. And then I showed up at midnight and hopped in line with you and watched the movie.
Yeah, my wife was there. Well, she's my wife now, but not at the time, obviously, because that was still in high school. She was there with us. One more funny Harry Potter anecdote is the Half-Blood Prince, I believe, came out right after I had my appendix out. This must have been book 7. One of the books came out right after I had my appendix out,
Okay.
and I was on heavy painkillers. Like it came out right a day or two after I got it out.
Okay. Yep.
So I read the first like 200 pages, and my bookmark was like 200 pages in, but I remembered nothing of reading it because I was like, high on these painkillers. And so I knew I read it because my bookmark was there, but I had to go back and completely reread it.
You either remembered nothing or you remembered it really different than what actually happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, the person, because we waited in line to get the book at midnight as well from like Barnes and Noble. And the person looked at my mom like she was crazy for allowing like this kid that was like hobbling around with like a appendix that had just been taken out for staying up until midnight just to get this like 7-pound book.
Hey, priorities.
Also, my science teacher was there as well. Mr. Phillips was there. Shout out. Anyway, okay, so good times with Harry Potter, and part of those memories are just why it's in my top 5 and will forever stay in my top 5. Number 1 is same thing with Ben Cosmere, but I decided to actually pick a series from Cosmere, and I only let myself pick one because if I was to populate it, like it would take up more than one place. So,
I think I see what's coming here.
So Mistborn.
Oh my gosh.
Era 2?
No, Era 1. No.
Oh,
Not Era 2.
Didn't stick with Era 2. That would have been great.
Mistborn, yeah, Era 1. Obviously, like Way of Kings would still be my top 5, but I'm reserving one spot for Cosmere, and of that spot, I'm saying the best is Mistborn. And fight me, I think it has the best ending of any trilogy I've ever read.
It's got a fantastic ending. I will not fight you there. But man, the second book was so forgettable.
I loved the second book. I loved the whole...
Oh, man.
I loved everything, like the little thing that Ben had going on with Zane and her relationship.
No spoilers area.
Yeah,
too.
sorry, no spoilers. There's a character named Zane that is in the second book that I enjoyed. Okay, so minor spoilers, I guess. But I loved it. I thought that the second book was a strong book, contrary to, it seems, everyone else's opinion about it. I really liked it.
I mean, I didn't hate it. I own the leather-bound edition of the second book, so I was willing to invest some money into it. But compared to the first book, which was awesome, and the latter half of the third book, the second book and the beginning of the third book are just a slog. I'm sorry. I mean, I would compare it to the slog and Wheel of Time.
Oh, come on.
Fantastic beginning and end, but I don't think I would really struggle to reread the second book.
All right. Well, there you have it.
Maybe
Steven.
you need to reread this.
Yeah, maybe you do.
Maybe I do. Maybe I need to pick up that leather-bound edition and give that a read.
Yeah, because you know what? I think that Mistborn might be being reviewed on Fantology in the next few months, and so I think that you might need to do some prep work here.
I will commit to rereading, and if my opinion changes, I will admit it on Discord and apologize profusely to Josh for making fun of his number 1 series.
Anyway, so some honorable mentions, of course, is Wheel of Time, which we've already talked about, but that did not make my top 5, partly because I read it, I finished it last year, about 10 years ago. I read the first 5, and you, Stephen, convinced me to read The Name of the Wind, and then I read Mistborn, and then I just never got back into it because it didn't really captivate me after I read the first 5 books. And I know that Jake is going to blast me for saying that, but it's kind of true. Other honorable mentions, I wanted to do my favorite standalone fantasy book is Stardust by Neil Gaiman.
Okay.
And my favorite short story novella is Emperor's Soul by Brandon Sanderson.
Emperor's Soul is very good. If you haven't read that one, if you're not into novellas and you're more into like epic fantasy, kind of like I am, believe me, that one is worth reading, even though it's short.
Yeah. Also, if you have a family member that is very scared of long books, but you really want to shove your love of the Cosmere down their throat, then give them Emperor Soul.
Yeah, not a bad strategy.
I actually made my entire family listen to it. Like my in-laws listened to it on a drive a couple of years ago through the audiobook format, and they all loved it. Unfortunately, none of them felt inspired to continue on the journey that is Sanderson.
Give them time. Give them time. They'll have more chances.
All right, Steven.
Let's
So
see yours. Let's do it.
Yeah, I guess we kind of changed up the format, Josh, and just reacted as you were saying it, but that's fine. We're through yours now. My number 5 is Red Rising, same as you, Ben.
Yeah.
Yeah, our lists are actually a little similar. I was surprised to see. Number 5, Red Rising. We already talked about it. It's a great series. The first trilogy is done and reviewed by Phantology. The second trilogy is coming out. I've actually heard some negative things about the second trilogy because of the shift in point of views that happens between the first and second trilogies, and some people can't get into it. But I've heard that the fifth book, the second book in the second trilogy, is really good, and people are optimistic about where that trilogy is going. Number 4, actually, I said my list wrong. Number 5 is not.
No, wait, listeners, before Steven goes on, Steven said, maybe we should write these down so that we don't mess them up, while he glared at Ben and I, because we have been known to do this kind of stuff where we mess things up.
I did a brief glance down at my list, which is written in small font on my phone. I was trying to focus on the camera and be engaging to our listeners, and I got the lines mixed up because Red Rising is actually an honorable mention, not number 5. I'm sorry.
All right. So what is your number 5, Steven?
My number 5 is the Kingkiller Chronicle. This is controversial, right? Because the series isn't finished and has not had an entry since 2011. If you don't count the Slow Regard of Silent Things, which I don't, because what was the point of that book?
I honestly, I think I finished it.
I've refused to read it until we get a release date. That's what I'm doing.
Gosh. Maybe pump up for the third book. I will read Slow Regard of Silent Things, but I read the first 40 pages and realized there was zero plot to it, and it was just art. And while I can appreciate that, I require a plot. I'm sorry. It was too much. I could not finish the book.
Yeah.
Anyway, to keep on going with Kingkiller, it does make my top 5 because Name of the Wind is my number 1 all-time favorite book to read. I've read it probably 5 or 6 times, maybe more, and I just love every single aspect of the book. I can gush about that book. We really need to review it on Phantology, but unfortunately it only makes 5 because I didn't like the second book quite as much, The Wise Man's Fear. And I mean, I still liked it, but not quite as much. And then the third book, just so long. It's too long. 2011 it's too long to wait for a book. I'm sorry. We need a third book. I'm hoping for one soon. But if Doors of Stone does well, then I could easily see this series bouncing up my list.
I started re-listening to this with my wife on a road trip that we just were on, and she is loving it. She thinks that it's like the best written book that she's ever read. She's maybe 20% of the way through, and she is absolutely loving it.
Yeah, so good all the way through. Just beautiful, beautifully written, great characters, great act. I mean, it's not even that much action. It's just the way that it's written and the way the story is told.
And to plug another podcast, if you haven't read this or if you're doing a reread, Waystone Pod, I think they go through chapter by chapter or groups of chapters and review it. So maybe give them a listen if you're interested in learning more about that or if you want to read through it for the first time.
Yeah, Waystone Pod is our Kingkiller Chronicle podcast friend, and the Black Tower podcast is our BFF when it comes to Wheel of Time. In fact, Jake and I were on their podcast, so give them a listen. They're a pretty fun listen. They have a little bit of a different feel than us, but that was a really fun time. Okay, number 4 is First Law Trilogy. Well, First Law series, because I'm anticipating really good things for the remainder of the books. We just finished Best Served Cold and reviewed it, and that's going to come out soon. And we all had really high opinions of that book. So I'm going the entire First Law universe here because I have a lot of faith.
Even though you haven't read
I think one thing we've learned about Steven right now is he is the consummate optimist that authors will finish works very well in order to be including these. And you're setting these in stone, Steven. They can't change, man.
They
They
can never,
can't
yeah,
change.
never change. Yeah, this is
No,
being written
this
down in stone.
podcast is like this is going in a box that we're gonna open up in 30 years and make fun of you because these series like ended the way that Game of Thrones did on the TV show.
Oh, that would be tragic. But I've heard so many good things about the remainder of the first Law books that have come out that I have faith in Joe Abercrombie that he's going in a great direction. I really like this series, even though it's very different than a lot of the other series that I like to read. So, First Law Universe, it's down in stone. Number 4. Number 3 is a series that is finished. And Josh, I'm a little surprised didn't make your honorable mentions even. It is Lightbringer. I think you knew where I was going, right?
Yeah, and my honorable mentions, I wanted to focus more on like a standalone book and a short story because we haven't talked about that, and I knew that you were going to put Lightbringer in your series. I had a feeling.
I'm that predictable. This is a series written by Brent Weeks. It's another epic fantasy series. It is 5 books, and it is complete. This is one of the few fantasy series that we have read that is actually fully complete and was really good all the way through. There's a little bit of controversy on the ending of the 5th book. There are some things I like, some things I didn't like, but overall, really solid series that got better and better as it went on. That's going to ruffle some feathers because I know some people didn't like the 4th and 5th. I did. It was a very unique series. It was written very well, great characters. If you haven't read Lightbringer yet, give that one a read.
Listen, this is a great example of why it's hard to start a series with your wife because I've listened to the first book and have been unable to continue listening because she wants to listen to it with me, but it's hard to find time to do that.
Come on, Ben's wife, who he can decide if he wants to name or not on live on the podcast. Okay, the last 2 are the same. Well, not quite the same. But number 2 is Wheel of Time. I can't say enough about Wheel of Time. We've reviewed the first 3 in the series. I know it only made Josh's honorable mention. It was a foundational series for me that I read kind of coming up through high school and afterwards, and I was pumped for the later releases to come out. I loved it all the way through and thought it ended just in a fantastic way, had great characters. So Wheel of Time is my number 2, and number 1 is not the Cosmere, and it's not Mistborn, but it is the Stormlight Archive.
Oh.
All 3 of us are total Sanderson fanboys. I'm sorry, Phantology listeners, that you have to deal with all the Sanderson fanboying. But, I mean, he is really at the top of fantasy right now. I think it's hard to argue anything else.
Say one thing for Stephen Merrill. Say that he is an optimist.
I have total faith that Sanderson's going to finish this series well.
You
He's
didn't
finished.
think that Oathbringer slowed down a little bit, though? I mean, I don't know.
It's a middle book. That's fine. I do understand that it slowed down a little bit. But these are 1,000-page books, 1,000-page plus books. They're going to have slower parts. I think Rhythm of War is going to be awesome. Mark it down right now. I think the series is going to finish great. He's already finished a super long series really well, and he's finished Mistborn really well. He's got this all planned out. I have total faith in Brandon Sanderson. Let's go, Stormlight.
One series that I am shocked actually didn't make any of our top 5 because I was considering putting it in. I know that we've all read them. Is the Gentleman Bastard series. So, Stephen, that where was that on your list? Like, was that close?
No, that's on my honorable mentions. It's written down on my phone, I promise. That book, the first book is Lies of Locke Lamora. Then you have Red Sails Under Red Skies, something like that. There's Red and Skies and
Red
Sails.
Seas Under Red Skies, I think.
Yeah, that one. Maybe No Sails. And then the third book is The Republic of Thieves. And those 3 books are all pretty good. The second book was not quite as good, but Lies of Locke Lamora is fantastic. That is a book that's more focused on a smaller cast of characters. By the name of Locke Lamora is the main character, and he's got his buddy Jean, and they kind of they do a lot of different little heist type things in a Venetian type Renaissance. Yeah. It's a very unique setting. It's a very fun read, even though there are some more pretty serious adult themes going on in this series. That's a good one. And I think we're getting book 4, Thorn of Emberlane, pretty soon. Scott Lynch tweeted out a finished picture of a manuscript. There may even be a release date attached to the end of this year. I'm not sure about that.
So here's my ice cold take on this. I actually stopped reading the second book because I disliked the way it began so much. And the way it began is with a cliffhanger, and then it expects you to kind of listen or read to find out what happened after this huge cliffhanger. So
that's not an ice cold take.
I dislike that so much I stopped reading it.
That is a valid take because the beginning of that book And really, that book in entirety is a little disappointing compared to the first and third. So I'm really glad that he redeemed himself in the third book. But yeah, the way he begun the third book was
Or
weird.
second.
It was the second book. It was weird. They do a lot of flashbacks in the series, but that was not a successful way to structure a story.
Yeah, it was like he had the idea, and the idea could have been executed well, maybe, but it wasn't. I don't know.
And then two more for honorable mentions for me were the Farseer books, Realm of the Elderlings, if you want to talk wider series by Robin Hobb. There are 3 trilogies with Fitz and the Fool written across Fitz's lifetime. Fitz is the main character. There is another trilogy that takes place in kind of a different realm of the world. And then there is another series of 4 books that takes place in yet another world, another part of the world. And I've read them all. I've read 16 books from Robin Hobb. And she doesn't quite make top 5, but these were really good books. These were really good books. They were written in like the late 90s and early 2000s, I think. And there's actually like a 20th anniversary illustrated version of Assassin's Apprentice, the very first book, coming out soon that I'm excited to get. I'm probably going to get that. It's only like $20 on Amazon. But that series was fantastic. I mean, 16 books is a big investment. You don't have to read all that many. The first series alone is really great. But Realm of the Elderlings, check that one out. And then my final one on honorable mentions is Dresden. Josh, I think, put this in his top 5. This is a great series for me, but doesn't quite make top 5, just because I typically enjoy the more epic fantasy flavor. And urban fantasy is a nice break from that, but doesn't quite make top 5.
We also, none of us had any sci-fi books on ours. I know that Red Rising is kind of a sci-fi, kind of a mix between dystopian, sci-fi, fantasy, a little bit of everything thrown in there. So I don't know. I was more thinking classic fantasy when I put this together. I know that sci-fi is a genre, like that they're kind of in the same genre, but maybe we should do a sci-fi list later on. I think if I were to include sci-fi, I think that there's some sci-fi series that might knock out like Dresden Files for my list if I were to include them.
One fun sci-fi series that we just reviewed not too long ago was the 3-Body Problem trilogy. 3-Body Problem is the name of the first book, and the trilogy is called Remembrance of the Earth's Past. It's written by a Chinese author. Closest guess on the name for me is Xin Luo. And this is a really fun sci-fi series, very hard sci-fi that gets into some pretty crazy ideas and has some nice like historical fiction type tie-overs. So that was a really fun series. If you're looking for an entry sci-fi, well, maybe not an entry sci-fi, but if you're looking for some hard sci-fi, check out that one.
Yeah, you might want to do more Orson Scott Card like Ender's Game classics. I don't know if that's classic sci-fi, but that's a little bit more accessible if you've never read sci-fi before.
Fair enough. Okay, that is probably about as much time as we have for this segment of April News / special edition top 5 series ranked. Thanks, guys. Any kind of parting shots? Any more digs you need to take a different series, or do you need to promote any more series?
Well, listen, I would just say hop on Discord to let us know your top 5, and we can pick that apart and suggest other books. And more than anything, I don't know if this was definitely top 5, but it was just like, look, read these book series because they're great, and like everything that we've talked about, like I don't think any of us disagree that these are great books and things that deserve to be read.
Yeah, I would recommend every book that everybody has mentioned on this pod that I've read. So even if we're making fun of each other, these are all amazing book series. If you haven't read them, read them.
But if you have not read any Name of the Wind, wait until there's a release date too, so you don't torture yourself. Okay.
So Stephen, was this a mistake to have Mackenzie start reading this right now?
No, Name of the Wind is a fantastic book. Look, even if book 3 is never written, it will remain my favorite book of all time.
Wow.
It's just so good.
Wait. I could say if book 3 is never written, but what if book 3 is written and like does not fulfill any of the promises that the first book makes?
I don't care. It's so locked in right now. It's so like ingrained in my growing up. I love that book.
This is stubborn, man. This is stubborn. Pure stubbornness.
Yeah, this may age terribly, but I love Name of the Wind, man. It's so good.
All right, you've earned your pipes for Name of the Wind fanboy.
Thank you. I accept my talent pipes. All right, thanks for listening. Hopefully you had fun with this. I know we did. Check us out at Phantology Books on social media, and all of the links to all of our episodes and other content is available at www.phantologybooks.com. Hop on Discord. Tell us your top 5. Give us more book recommendations. We are always open to reading more books, and we are trying to, but our time is limited, so we cannot, unfortunately, read 24/7, even though I would like to, personally. So anyway, thank you, Ben and Josh, and see you guys next time.
See you, Steven.